Hey you guys, Channel Pup back again, and I understand that there's been a lot of different Spider-Man rumors and news going around, and from me it's just been radio silence for a while. Now the reason is I don't want to get too caught up in rumors that are just going to set everyone up for disappointment. I think there's a lot of that going around, but we do have some official details, and I have some theories of my own and predictions as to what is to come from Spider-Man No Way Home later this year around Christmas time. So without further ado, let's just dive straight into it. Before we get stuck into Spider-Man No Way Home, I just want to acknowledge one piece of official news, being that Aaron Taylor Johnson has been cast as Kraven the Hunter in the Kraven the Hunter solo movie. I mean, okay, he wouldn't be my choice, but I guess he kind of works. But then that opens the burning question: how does the Sony Pictures universe of Marvel characters, aka the Spunk, tie into the MCU going forward? As we know, the Morbius trailer was very much set in the MCU. We have references to Spider-Man being framed, we've got the flexing of Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home, we've got Vulture making an appearance. So I'm gonna say this: if Kraven shows up in the MCU, Wanda Maximoff is gonna be in for a shock. But what I'm gonna say is this: I think the reality of the situation is that the Sony Pictures universe of Marvel characters will be completely inconsequential to the MCU. So you'll never see the Spunk get referenced in the MCU. It will just be the MCU gets referenced in the Spunk, and maybe Spider-Man can join in on the party within the Spunk, while the overall meat and potatoes of Spider-Man happens in the MCU. That's what I think is happening here. Sony are making films set in the MCU that are kind of just unofficial MCU films with very little ties to the MCU itself. It's a one-way street for now, but I guess maybe there could be further agreements down the line that permit Venom to join in the fun. And you know, my good buddy Cyrus the Skeptic actually had a great idea for how Venom could factor into the MCU. You could have it so that Eddie was dusted in the blip, and the symbiote went searching for new hosts to help him find Eddie, and eventually he got attached to Peter Parker upon the return after the blip, not realizing that Eddie Brock is back alive and well, and perhaps Peter Parker has a significantly worse relationship with the symbiote. They could do more the comics thing of that. The symbiote doesn't make Peter Parker dark or anything, it's just that Peter Parker doesn't really get along with the idea of the symbiote being a living creature living up his butthole. I think that would be a good way to go. I don't think people really want to see Dark Spider-Man again after Spider-Man 3. I thought it was done well, other people were uncomfortable with it. It is what it is. Safest bet is to not do the whole Dark Spider-Man thing, and I especially don't think that would work with Tom Holland Spider-Man. Right, so moving on over to Spider-Man No Way Home, I might be about to eat a shoe, because in the past I've been saying cool your jets, it's realistically not any kind of Spider-Verse movie. The reason I say this is primarily because I do think people could be setting themselves up for disappointment if they're expecting to see Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield alongside Tom Holland. I just don't know if that's going to happen, and we've got no official confirmation of it. Personally, I think Spider-Man No Way Home as a concept has enough on its plate with the identity reveal without two other Spider-Men jumping around. But Alfred Molina has dropped some huge news regarding his role as Dr. Octavius. I say news, this came out quite a while back, but I'm just covering this just now. Jon Watts said to him that no one stays dead in this universe, and Alfred Molina very much hinted that the Dr. Octavius he'll be playing in Spider-Man No Way Home is very much the one from Spider-Man 2, and that they will be using de-aging technology to make Alfred Molina resemble his 2004 self. He also stated that Doc Ock's story takes place pretty much immediately after the events of Spider-Man 2. And he stated that Doc Ock will be doing a lot of scowling and wreaking havoc, and, it does very much sound as though that would undermine a lot of his character development and his ending in the original Spider-Man 2. However, I do get the sense that you can probably just treat this as it's not the exact Spider-Man 2 universe. I mean, like, that's the thing, is oftentimes when films like this tie themselves into previous continuity, it does have a tendency to, you know, cause people to react like, oh, it's ruined it. Not necessarily. You gotta remember, Spider-Man 2 wasn't made intending for there to be some crossover later down the line, so it doesn't really affect Spider-Man 2. I suggest just enjoying this for what it is. Alfred Molina's Doc Ock is back on screen. We've got a tie to the Sam Raimi universe. That's awesome. More recent reports indicate that the main villain of Spider-Man No Way Home will be the Green Goblin, as portrayed by Willem Dafoe from 2002's Spider-Man. Now, if there's any part of the Sam Raimi universe that I think would fit in well with the new universe, it's Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin and J.K. Simmons' J. Jonah Jameson, so I'll be thrilled to bits if that turns out to be true. Allegedly, Dafoe's Goblin will be leading the Sinister Six, which will include Electro as portrayed by Jamie Foxx, Doc Ock as portrayed by Alfred Molina, Sandman as portrayed by Thomas Hayden Church, Rhino as portrayed by Paul Giamatti, and the Lizard as portrayed by Rhys Ifans. Which would mean that the MCU's first Sinister Six is comprised entirely of familiar Spider-Man villains from films outside of the MCU. And I think that is a cool way to go, because it means you don't have to develop these villains from the get-go in this film. You can say they're from other dimensions where they've already been fully developed as villains in previous films. The Sinister Six is like Spider-Man's equivalent to like a villainous Avengers in a way. And it's like, oh, you could say, oh, you need the solo films to build those guys up. Well, technically, they've already done the legwork just by making use of the other dimensions that they have at hand, which I think is a cool idea, but I do think that the whole identity reveal falls really flat if they're just gonna bring in villains from other dimensions that either don't know who this Spider-Man is, but already know that Spider-Man is Peter Parker in other universes, so to these guys, it's just old news. It makes much more sense to have a villain in the MCU's universe that's like, whoa, Peter Parker is Spider-Man? Right, I can take him down way easily this time. Like, in a way, a Spider-Man equivalent to Deathstroke, someone that can really fuck this guy up, and I think the right choice for that is still the Green Goblin. Even though I do think that the Green Goblin tends to be a bit of a crutch in Spider-Man movies, like, this guy has been used a lot. But hey, if it's Willem Dafoe reprising his role, I think it's worthwhile. So if we're taking this as a Spider-Verse film, I think what would happen then is that this film would focus on Tom Holland's Spider-Man fighting off the Sinister Six, and then maybe they would introduce the Spider-Verse with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield at the very end of the film or as an after credits. So this would be like part one of Spider-Verse, like the dawn of the Spider-Verse in a way. And then the next one would be the fully blown Spider-Verse, which I think would be a much better way of managing the time, I think, because otherwise it's a lot to pack into that one film. However, there's another thing that I think is a bit more likely. So, supposedly, the title Spider-Man No Way Home refers to the villains who have no way home back to their own dimensions, or so it seems anyway. Now, what's cool about that is that we kind of had that motivation with Mysterio in Spider-Man Far From Home, except he was a fake. We had a fake-out multiverse with a fake-out multiversal villain. Right, so hear me out for a second. The Sinister Six, which are comprised of existing movie versions, are illusions created by Mysterio. We've seen that Mysterio has a team. And we've seen that Mysterio like to run with the whole, these are made-up multiversal characters with their own sets of lore. So it'd be quite interesting to go from Spider-Man Far From Home, which had the illusion elementals, through to Spider-Man No Way Home, which would have the illusion Sinister Six, stepping it up a notch. Maybe at the last minute, Mysterio would rush in and save Spider-Man from the Sinister Six, or save New York from the Sinister Six. It would mean that no, these characters are not from the Spider-Verse, and they're not from the multiverse as such. Now, this wouldn't be the first time that Marvel would have done metacasting, which is exactly what this would be. You basically make their likeness to existing versions of these characters completely coincidental to bait and tease, like what they did with Ralph Boner in WandaVision, how they made us think that he was Peter Maximoff from the Fox universe. Of course, this would have to be one of two things. A, Mysterio's comeback, or the outcome of that illusion twist would have to be massive and exciting to make up for it. And B, we'd really have to make use of the Sinister Six as a concept in this film and make the most of this, because it would effectively rule out these characters and the Sinister Six ever being in the MCU if they were to just do it as an illusion. So having that twist would definitely come at a cost. However, at the same time, it could be that maybe Mysterio went around trying to recruit the real Sinister Six and couldn't, so he made his own fake ones, which are coincidentally like existing versions of these characters we've seen in different continuities. At the same time, I guess it's not so bad if this Sinister Six and these villains turn out to be fakes, because like we've at least seen the real deals in their respective solo movies. I feel like it would be easier to deal with this Sinister Six being a fake out knowing that we've seen all of these villains get fleshed out in previous films than if they were to make brand new ones with all new sets of potential and then say, ha, gotcha, that's a fake. But I do think we might be going down the bait and switch meta casting route, as there's a lot of evidence that it could be doing that, even down to the fact that at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home, Mysterio, before his alleged death, says people will believe anything. So I think that's going to be the whole thing, is like, wow, we're watching this thinking they're going to do the Spider-Verse, and then Mysterio comes and goes, ha, gotcha, you really believe that. I think that's a good use of Mysterio, but I think a lot of fans would be pissed off. I, for one, wouldn't, because Mysterio is my favorite Spider-Man villain, and I prefer to see more of him than to see the Spider-Verse, personally. But at the same time, I'm not complaining either way. I mean, even as it stands, maybe Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield do appear in some capacity, but maybe they're fakes, I don't know. I feel like what's going to happen, though, with this movie at least, isn't going to be so much that it's a Spider-Verse movie, so much as it is MCU Spider-Man 3 pulling from existing Spider-Man sources to conclude its story in a fun, fan-servicey way. But for now, my prediction is that the Sinister Six are all illusions portrayed by Mysterio's many different team members, and that they're employing the meta-casting route that they went with in WandaVision. However, at the same time, we are going into the multiverse saga with the MCU, so that still doesn't rule anything out. Like, we could be getting a Spider-Verse here, or maybe we could be seeing little glimpses of the Spider-Verse in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I don't think we'll see much of it, but it could just be a little cameo here and there from maybe Tobey Maguire or maybe Andrew Garfield, who knows? But anyway, guys, that's my thoughts on the recent news and rumors on Spider-Man No Fucking Home Dog. Anyways, what do you guys think? Comment below and discuss, and as always, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, hit subscribe, hit the like button, and in the description below are links to different social media feeds, including Twitter, where I'm most active, but as well as that, my link to my Patreon, where you can really help support this channel, which would mean the world to me, as ultimately I do need money to eat and live. And you can't do that off of just ad revenue alone, it seems. Anyways, a big shout out to the patrons in the $10 tier. That's Cyrus the Skeptic and Marcus Ward. Love you guys from the bottom of my heart. And as for the rest of you, thank you so much for watching, guys, and have a great day.